Coming up on
you cannot just
Sophie-sticated
waken up love before it's time. And so a lot of y'all get into a jacked up relationships because you are with the wrong person. You are not sitting around chasing the right thing, and you are not waiting for the right time in order for your soul to recognize the person that it's supposed to be with.
Dedication, preservation, take a look inside your salvation. Do every good work, it takes patience, like a butterfly, transformation.
What is up, guys? Sophia here, and I am back with another video, and we are doing an interesting topic today, and it is about, is there a one, or does God have a soulmate to you according to Christianity? Now, before we get into the video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay updated on all of my videos. And also, don't forget to check the description box because I put a lot of stuff up in there, including a link to my Patreon where I talk about all things leveling up. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into it, shall we? Okay, so before we get into does God have a soulmate for you, understand that everything that I say, as always, is biblically based. So the first couple that I want to get into is the first man, of course, and it is Adam and Eve. So we are going to go to Genesis chapter 2 in verse 21 through 23. It basically says that God put Adam to sleep and he took a rib from Adam, and then when he woke up, he recognized Eve. And this is what Adam said. Now this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman because she was taken out of men. So is that like a soul? Not necessarily, but it does talk about the idea of two people being united as one, and Adam specifically recognizing Eve. And then if you go to 24, it says, for this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and shall be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Mind you, this is the first book of the Bible. It is Genesis. The idea of a man and a woman becoming one flesh or one person after they get married is also said in Matthew 19:5, Corinthians 6:16, and Ephesians 5:31 through 33. When you join yourself with somebody, he intends for you guys to actually become one person, even though you're not one person literally. That's what you should be doing, if that makes sense. Moving on. I'm going to actually get into some real life couples in which I believe God ordained to be quote unquote soulmates. Well, that I want to get into is the Queen of Sheba, and I want to get into Solomon. Now, I talked about Solomon in my how to get over lust video because this is a prime example that you do have free will. Solomon had like a lot of wives, like hundreds of them, and like thousands of concubines, in which that ultimately separated him from God because of, you know, his little lustful tendencies. But that's not the point. The point that I'm trying to make here is that I gave you free will. That is the point. You can choose to marry whoever it is that you want to marry. I want to go into the Queen of Sheba. You can read about the Queen of Sheba when she first heard about Solomon in 1 Kings 10, where basically she heard about Solomon. She came to Solomon with all of these like magnificent gifts, like it was crazy, because she was so called and drawn to Solomon. So as I just told you, in the Old Testament, in 1 Kings 10, we know that the Queen of Sheba was called to Solomon. But why do we know that that is the soulmate? So now I want to actually go to the New Testament, and I want to start in Matthew 12:42, and the same verse is also in Luke 11:31, just in case you guys want to cross-reference. It is in two actual books within the New Testament, and it says, the queen of the south, in parentheses, Sheba, will stand up as a witness in judgment against this generation and will condemn it because she came from the ends of the earth to listen to the wisdom of Solomon. But why all of a sudden did she feel led and called to come to Solomon, so much so that she can now pass judgment on people? Because God called her to Solomon. Now, I want to go to the Songs of Solomon. It's like this long thing that he's talking to the love of his life before their wedding. Now, do we know for sure who this woman is? No, we don't. However, there is speculation that this is the conversation between him and the Queen of Sheba. The reason why I believe that it is the Queen of Sheba is because A, Sheba is freaking black. And we know that the person was dark Because if we go to the chapter 1 and we talk chapter 1 starting from verse 5, so basically we talked about an individual who is dark. We talk about an individual that is not from Jerusalem because she is specifically identifying herself as different from the people of Jerusalem by her skin tone. So we know that she does not look like them, and we know that she is darker than them. And so if I had to take an educated guess, I personally believe that this person was Queen of Sheba. Why is this significant? Because in the Songs of Solomon, specifically, they mention the idea of a soulmate. And so then if we go to chapter 3, on my bed at night after I dreamed of that, I sought the one whom my soul loves, sought the one whom my soul loved. Remember, I just gave you that whole thing about the Queen of Sheba because we know that she sought out Solomon because she felt called and said, so I must arise now and go out into the city, into the streets and into the squares, places I do not know. I must seek him whom my soul loves. When I found him whom my soul loves, I held on to him and I would not let him go. In the specific Bible verse, it speaks about like, okay, this person was like sleeping, restless, dreaming, feeling like her soul was supposed to be with somebody and she was seeking him out. Additional tidbit that she gives to women, that you do not rouse nor awaken my love until she pleases. You cannot just waken up love before it's time. And so a lot of y'all get into a jacked up relationships because you are with the wrong person. You are not sitting around chasing the right thing, and you are not waiting for the right time in order for your soul to recognize the person that it's supposed to be with. And I am not telling you women to chase after men. That is not what I'm saying. Do not misconstrue me. I'm just using the Bible verse as an example. Now, in case you are still not convinced, I am actually going to go into 2 more couples that I believe God ordained as soulmates. The first is going to be Rebecca, and I also spoke about this in another video. I forget the title, but I'll put it down in the description box in case you guys want to watch that. It is in Genesis chapter 24. At this specific time, Abraham was trying to find a wife for his son Isaac, and he sent his servant out to go find this woman. But what I want to specifically point out is the verbiage that he used. So in the midst of his prayer, he said, may she be the one whom you, which he is praying, therefore he is talking to God, have selected. And in the Amplified version, it says in parentheses, as a wife. Before he had finished speaking, Rebecca came out with her water on her shoulder. So basically that was the one. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but basically that was the one. And there's other stipulations as to why the servant was sent to this land. And so basically she met all of the criteria. And on top of it, the confirmation was that the servant prayed and said, God, give me a sign saying that this is the person that you chose to be a wife to Isaac. And lo and behold, she came out, or therefore designating herself as the one that God had chose. Soulmate. Now, I also must mention before y'all try to be claiming people as y'all soulmate, that this should also be mutual. So this man came and he identified Rebecca, and basically he was like, oh, you're gonna be my servant's wife. Like normal people would probably be like, heck no, I don't know you. But Rebecca went. We go down to chapter 24, verse 8, saying, if the woman is not willing to follow you to this land, then you will be free from this oath and blameless. So it was a highly likelihood that he was not going to find the woman in this land, because what woman wants to be taken from her mother and father and follow some random strange person across the desert to go marry some man that she don't know? Therefore, she must have also had a calling from God to also be a wife to Isaac. And we know that because if we go to chapter 24 in Genesis verse 6, says that Abraham told the servant that God told him he will send his angels before you to guide you, and you will take a wife from there for my son and bring her here. So Abraham already knew before he sent the servant out that God sent an angel before him to identify Rebecca, which is why Rebecca went to him, which is why we know that it was ordained by God, which is why I think that we can say that it's soulmate. So the last one that I am going to talk about is Queen Esther. In this specific instance, God ordained this into existence. How do we know? Because the Bible specifically says it, okay? So when Mordecai came to Esther and he was specifically asking her to help him, what Mordecai said to her, And this is in Esther 4 at the bottom of verse 14. And who knows whether you have attained royalty for such a time as this and for such a very purpose as this. I also want to point something out, what the king specifically felt for Esther, because mind you, they only spent one night together. But as soon as he saw Esther, this is chapter 2, verse 17, it says, and mind you, this is when she was spending one night with him, okay? Now the king loved Esther more than all the other women. She found favor and kindness with him more than all the other virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen. But my point is, first, what did Mordecai say? Who knows that you were not called into this royal position for a time such as this? Who would have called Esther for a time such as this? God. So if we know that God plucked Esther out of the oblivion to place her as queen for a time such as this, then we know that it was meant for her to be with the king. And as I said with the last example with Rebecca and Isaac, once again, it has to be mutual. So when the king saw Esther out of all these other virgins, and there could have been hundreds, thousands, we don't even know. We know he was getting some tail every night, right? He stopped all of that. He got Esther as soon as he spent the night with her, and he loved her more than all the other women. We can assume that because Esther had a purpose in all of this, God has a plan, that God intentionally placed these two together. Therefore, I say that yes, God can have a one, and yes, I personally feel that he can have a soulmate. With everybody that we mentioned in regards to the soulmate aspect, they kind of had a purpose. They kind of had something that God wanted them to do. They kind of had some descendants that God wanted them to create. So I don't know if it is God's will for every single person to have a specific soulmate or to have a one. That is something that you are just going to have to use some discernment on and pray to God on yourself so that he can reveal that specific answer to you. So, but if you're asking me if it's possible, I feel from scripturally based information, indeed, it is possible. We see it, we read it, we know it, we get it. Yes, I believe so. All right, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to leave some comments on if you feel like God has a soulmate for you, if you feel like there is a one. Or don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys another day, another time. Bye, y'all.